Hi guys, welcome to another video tutorial with me, Clarice. This is part of my holiday Christmas series, the holiday Christmas pink series that I'm doing. The first thing that we're painting is this nice Christmas festive house. The base drawing for this and how you can get to it is listed in the description below, so feel free to get it from there. And I'm going to walk you through the items that I'm using really quickly so you can prep. So for my brushes, I'm using my Princeton Neptune number 6, Princeton Velvet Touch number 4, and then the Princeton Heritage in a size 0 for all the tiny details that we have happening. For my colors, I'm using my Daleroni set of 48, which is right here, and I will list all the colors I'm using so you guys can follow along. I've got water handy on the side, and I have paper towel handy as well, and we are ready to begin. Before we actually begin painting and get right into the heart of things, I want to remind you guys to please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, as it really does help my channel grow. All right, so let's get started. So here's the colors we're going to be using, and I'm going to break them down for you real quick. So these two are going to be our white pillars. The main area of the house is going to be a nice light pink, and then we are going to tackle doing the overlaying little potted Christmas plants right here. And the top or the roof of the house is going to be dominantly white because we want to reflect snow. And let's see, the window sills are going to have a little bit of extra holiday foliage and florals. Same thing around the door, but fairly simple, fairly quick. Everything is drawn in already. Just wanted to give you the lay of the land before we begin. Okay, so let's begin by getting our pink mixed. And so what I will do is use the number 4 to mix my pink. And I will be using the number 6 to get our nice damp area of color first. And then adding the pink in so that it gives me a nice little bloom. Okay, so here we go. I'm using my permanent rose for the background of the house. This is what that color looks like. It is a gorgeous light pink. The way I am getting this to be light is by adding lots and lots of water. It's always nicer to go lighter, because if you feel like you want to go brighter, you can just add more color, but you cannot take away color once it's added on. So build up from that. Let's move this brush to the side and let's begin. So I'm just going to dampen this area. And the paper I'm using, should have mentioned it previously, is the Canson XL. So what's going to happen, you're going to notice that it dries up fairly quickly. So what we want to do is maybe try and dampen the first half or so, drop in your color, and then extend downward. So here we go, I'm getting some of that color, and I'm going to drop that in right here. So this, once it's dampened already and then you're dropping the color, you kind of are, the color is kind of doing the work for you. So what I'm doing is just going around the edges, and then the color is just spreading to where the water is, which is perfect because it's saving me time and effort to go around and really paint these areas. So this is the technique we'll be using for our large expanses of paint. What I'm doing is adding a little bit more because I want this top area to be a lot darker. And so I'm just dropping in more color at the top and then just a little bit off to the side here. A little by where the windows are as well. Feel free to keep layering till you're happy with what you get. Just going to do one more line at the top. This should be good. Just drop. So a light wash over the area where the tree is as well, where the tree is going to be. And you can even go over the pots as well if you want to. I'm just going to leave mine bare for now. Get more of that color, drop that in. Make sure your pillars are still nice and white. Dropping more color in over here. Outlining my little pots here as well. And I'll just like we highlighted at the top, I'll just highlight a little bit at the bottom as well. So just getting some of that in just to kind of give it that nice shading. I'm keeping a little rim of white around my door. Just dropping in more color there. And here. Perfect. So now we are going to extend this and do it on this side real quickly. I'm going to skirt around my tree pot so that I don't overlay, and then drop in my color just like that. Beautiful blooms happening all over the place. Exactly what I want to see. Stunning. And just like I did with this window here, I'm taking a little bit of color from the color cake and I'm just dropping that in here. Add some to the side of my door as well. And then a little bit at the bottom. These areas here, just to sort of really make them pop. But otherwise we've got a nice, gorgeous pink, or cute pink house, I should say. If your areas have dried up when you're adding this highlights of pink, just take your brush with water and just lightly graze to blend it in with the top, and that should fix any kind of straight edges that you have. Okay, so we've got that happening. What I'm going to do last but not least is just get a little bit more pink. I want there to be a slightly more looser, sort of darker overlay at the top here. So I'm just taking this brush and I'm lightly, with that light pink on it, I'm just kind of adding a couple of strokes at the top. And as we go to the edges, I'm just being extra mindful with my strokes instead of being extremely loose. And this gives us that nice dark to light sort of effect happening with the house. Some highlights to the side. re-emphasizing the bottom, kind of fading off. All right, so we let this dry and then we move on to doing some of the detailing for the door and then the windows. And yeah, so let's start off with the windows actually. Actually, it doesn't matter if we do the windows or the doors because they're both going to be the same color. And we're using Prussian blue for that. And I'm going to mix a little bit of indigo with it just to give it a slightly darker feel. So Prussian blue is like this gorgeous blue, bright blue like this. And if we take some of the indigo and mix that in, it gives us a richer looking blue. And so that's what I want. So now that we have this, or some of the pink is seeping into it, break that off. Here we go. Now that we have this mixed up here, let's start off with doing a wash over the doors real quick. And again, we can do the same technique that we did for the house. So taking your number 6, if you want to just go ahead and dampen your door. This is the largest surface. We have a white ring around the door. And so this is why I'm doing the door first, to give the rest of the house a little bit more time to dry off. So dampening this whole area. Then I already have some color on here. I'm just going to drop that in real nicely. There we go. And it is such a pretty sight to see the color just sort of bloom into things. So I'm going to bring this down, adding strokes, using my brush sideways, pulling all the color down, getting more color for the base of this door. And that is it for the door. Actually, I'm just going to drop in more color here. And just dab in a little bit at the top. Give me some nice dark areas on the door to kind of really make this not so flat looking. That's great. So I like how this door is looking. You can even drop in a couple here. And let's move on to doing the tops of my windows. Okay, so this area is still very damp for me, which is why the blue is blooming in. So make sure you don't do that. This is clearly an accident on my end. I'll have to figure out a way to sort it out in a bit. But for now, to stop the bloom, I'm going to take my paper towel and lightly dab so that it stops it from going further into the pink. And I will definitely figure out a way around that. So give yourself some time to allow things to dry up. See, my area over here is kind of blooming a little bit as well. So I think what I'll do is I'll extend the length of my tops and add a little bit more indigo to it to make it nice and dark. So we've got that. Let me do a little bit of the highlights happening in the top here because this area has nothing yet. So it's dried and we can add some stuff to it, color to it. I'm just adding a little bit more here. It's a nice stark dark look to it. Okay, so here we go. Now it has a little bit of snow happening on top. So you can do two things. You can either choose to paint just the bottom area or paint the whole area in the dark blue and then use a little bit of gouache to cover up some of these windows. So whatever floats your boat, go with that. I'm going to try and do just painting like a sliver or a peak of this, and then let's just see how it pans out. I'm also going to do the sill right here. And let's do our pots as well. And then we'll get back to these guys here because I want them to dry properly. So here's our pots. You can choose to do the painting by dampening the area first and then going in with the color. I'll leave that up to you guys to decide what's your preference when it comes to painting areas like this. I'm going to get some more indigo directly from here, and I'm going to add that in. Same thing with this pot. Now this pot I kind of extended and made it a tad bit longer, so it should mimic. This one should also mimic its counterpart. So just like that. I'm getting color directly from the color cake without washing my brush. Just got a little bit of water on it, and I'm adding these highlights to my pot. So now everything is fairly dried up, and I just went ahead and added a little bit of outlines to my windows here. And again, I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do with that window over there. But let's get back into adding more of the indigo Prussian blue mix to our windowsills, and also to, I believe, the roof. Yes. So here we go. So I'm going to make sure that this is nicely painted in, leaving a little bit of white space in between this just to sort of indicate maybe some bits of snow. Same thing here. Hopefully that area that I just painted is not damp still. And almost finished with this. You can also use your number 0 brush if you have that, or number 1, number 2, whichever brush you have, to get in on these tiny little details. I'm just using the 4 because the Velvet Touch has a fabulous pointed tip, and if your brush control is decent enough, you're able to get some nice results. Okay, so let's get to doing our window here at the top. And I'm just going to lightly add another little stroke around here. Give it some variation in blue there. And then adding some of my indigo Prussian blue mix to our roof. And then we got to add some over there at the top as well. So over here you need a little bit of a steady hand just to make sure that you're not getting into the pink area too much. So the rest of the roof is going to be white, as I mentioned. And if you've got varying variations of blue happening, that would work wonderfully as well, just to give different light shadow effects happening here. And I'm making the top of this area uneven so that it reflects the snow. And I think that's good enough. I have a little bit of white between the blue and the pink in some areas. And I like that to keep the whole loose feeling happening within the painting. So I'm not going to do much about that. Leave it as is. I think it adds something nice to it. I'm going to add a little bit of dark. Maybe take some indigo directly from here. Drop that in certain areas at the bottom. There we go. Okay, so that's great. We need to add a little bit at on the chimney as well. The chimney. So getting some color and dropping that in over here. I'm going to do what I did over here for this one to kind of add the color. Make sure you're not putting your hand into your paint, your wet paint. So adding it at the bottom there. And then just lightly adding a line of blue to kind of show that there's like some snow happening. So that's good enough. And we allow this to dry. Oh, we got to do this part here. I knew there was something else missing. Let's do this. And even for this, we can choose to do the bottom and kind of give it that feel that there's snow on the top. I'm gonna have to touch up some of these tops over here because I got a little bit of pink bleeding into some areas. This this area too here, I'm gonna have to add a little bit of white. And then we should be good. Adding some semblance of blue at the top so it's peeking out, but dominantly this is still going to be white to show our snow. I'm doing that on this side too. Windows, I want to do a very light blue, so I think I should have introduced this earlier. I think the cobalt blue, cerulean blue should be good if we just get a very light version of it. That's a nice bright blue happening. We just want a little bit and water it down by a lot. And then like I've got some hard edges happening here. It's fine if you kind of almost go rounded with them. And this way it kind of looks like there's snow hanging around these areas. So keep that in mind. And then I've left some white area between the sill and the window, the glasses, the glass, window glass, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to add some nice little holly bits to it. So let's just get this in real quickly. Beautiful. Love that blue and how it looks. Once things are dried up, I'm going to erase my pencil markings. Okay, so those are done. Let's do the ones at the very top. And then we are finished painting the windows. So again, like I mentioned, doing little rounded bits really help emphasize that whole snow collecting in here. And this is where you can also let loose, and you don't have to worry too much about making sure that they are perfectly symmetrical and the shapes need to be, or the edges need to be straight or anything like that. This is great because we're giving that whole loosey effect, and that there's snow doing all of that. So it's beautiful. Love it. Okay, so now we've done that. We've done this. Oh, we need to paint our chimney pink. So I'm going to get a little bit more of that pink activated. And I do know this area is damp with the blue, so I'm going to try my best to not touch the blue. Otherwise I'll get a seepage just like I did on my first window at the bottom, which is what we don't want happening. Okay, so that's great. Love how that turned out. I'm liking the little bit of white. Let's get a little bit of indigo for... Oh, I got a little bit of color on here. Try and wash this off. Actually, it doesn't matter because we're actually going to be painting the background like a nice light blue. So if you've got little smudges happening, that's okay. Don't worry about it too much. Let's do the base real quickly. And for the base, I'm thinking more of a grayish color. So if you've got ivory, or if you've got even Payne's gray, any of those would be wonderful right now. So Payne's gray and the indigo are fairly similar in color, but here's Payne's gray. And I just want a very watered down version of it. So very, very light. And I'm using the number 6. And we're just going to get a nice little coverage happening here. So again, you can choose to dampen your area first and then drop in the color. I'm lightly dampening this area with a light version of the Payne's gray. And then I'll go in with a darker version just for the areas like around the pot, around the door, that sort of thing. And this way I get some nice shading happening in there too. If you can keep some white areas, that might be nice. After the fact, just kind of trying to take off some color, if you can. Okay, so now that I've gotten that was indigo, here's Payne's gray. I'm going to get a little bit more from here, and I just want to drop some in, like outlining, not outlining, but like around where the pots are, where the door is a little bit. Just to sort of really get that nice shadowy areas where it's needed. Nice little loose manner. You can also choose to get this color in a little bit later, which will give you less of a bloom. So, the more you let it dry and then go in, you get a softer, not a softer, you get a more prominent blend, I would say. So while we're on the Payne's gray tip, I want to get a little bit of that happening in the corners here to highlight these areas of snow. A little bit around here. Some around the chimney as well. And I'm just lightly dabbing, and then obviously some right here. So let that dry. Let's focus a little bit more on the outer bits. Actually, before we do that, let's take a little bit of that Payne's Gray. Now that it's drying up, just add a touch of that additional to the bottoms. Get some nice, darker, prominent details happening. It's fabulous. So we're almost sort of done most of it, and all that's left is to do the detailing. But one big thing that will really make this pop is to do our background. So what I'm going to do is use my flat brush right here from the Princeton Velvet Touch collection and just dampen the area. And then we're taking some of our cerulean blue and we are painting the background. Once again, feel free to get different variations of blue. So for instance, the way you would get that is I'm painting just this half of the painting or dampening this half of the painting so I can get my blue in, and I'll be mixing variations of the blue and dropping that in, just kind of like how we did with the door and such. Now I don't want to make this too long a video, so what I will do is after I've dampened it and just started doing the first few strokes, I am going to stop the video, do my little painting bit, and then join you guys right back. So here we go. Here's the cerulean, mixing some of that in, and I'm just going to drop it in around these areas. Feel free to like really use the side of your brush to get those nice big areas of coverage. Beautiful. Love the little unevenness happening with the coloring. This is what I mean by getting different variations happening in there. It's very light right now on camera, and that can happen, but I'm watering this down a lot. I'm just going to drop move the color around while it's damp. This is the perfect time to do that. And then I'm just phasing it out by just mixing it this way here at the bottom. Just adding more water. You don't have to paint the bottom, but it's an option. So now I'm going to do the rest and I'll be right back. Before we do anything else, I'm just going to get a little bit of the white gouache that I've got here on my number 6. And I'm going to cover up certain areas that needed touching up. So for instance, we've got some here for my blue faux pas. And I'm just going to extend that around here to kind of indicate the snow collecting. Then a little bit on this side because we got some there. Get a little bit of unevenness happening on this side here just because this now has that dabbing texture or pattern to it. Then now that we have that, we've got a little bit at the top here, just over on this chimney. And I don't think this really needs too much, but I'm just going to add more at the bottom than anything else. And then touch up a little bit of blue at the top so we can see what that edge looks like. Same thing here on these windowsills, just a tad bit. Same thing here, showing a little bit of buildup snow. And I think that's these are pretty much all the areas that we need before we can proceed on to decorating our house with some nice holly and Christmas tree or pine trees, whatever you want to call them. Okay, so this is great. Let's get to doing some of that. Actually, before that, some at the bottom, just a little bit. Make it look sporadic and loose. Oh, and of course, if you want to add a little bit happening in the sky as well, just dab some here and there. Get that nice Christmas feeling. I'm not going to add any over the house, but you can. Maybe I'll do a little bit here and there. Give a nice little... Although this can also be done at the end, once you have finished painting in your trees and adding your decor and things like that. I think that might be more helpful. Yeah, but you do you. Whatever's easier and done best. You decide. Trying to make them bigger as they're higher. Keeping this nice and loose and fun. Not really looking for symmetry, right? So this is where things get to be a bit more fun again. So we're going to be doing some greenery first and then dropping in some of the red. So for the green, I'm using a combination of my Viridian hue, and I'll mix a little bit of indigo in it just to get a more darker tone as opposed to a bright green. So something like this. This is the Prussian blue, so let's get the indigo. Or you can even do the Payne's gray, whichever works best for you. So this is like a nice dark teal that I have happening. But let's just get some more green in there to make sure it looks green. Here we go. Okay, so for our trees right here where the pots are, we're doing these cute little decorated trees. So I'm starting with the tip and then lightly zigzagging, leaving white space in between. So you don't want to paint the whole thing, but I'm just dabbing to give it that nice shape. I want to make sure it's nice and even over the pot. So I'm just extending this side to be a little bit more. And then getting some of that indigo directly from here. And I'm going to drop that into my area. But make sure you've got enough white space happening, okay? Perfect. So now that we have that, we can proceed and do one over here on this side. Love the colors together. So I'm just starting with a line and then I just lightly dab and I extend the dabbing more outward as I'm going down. Mixing more of my color. Let's keep going. And get a little bit more of the blue. The indigo, that is. Dropping that in right in the very center so we get a nice green mixed in with some darker hues of teal almost. yes, don't mix too much because we still need to add in some of the red. So certain areas will just drop in a little bit of red. Oh, I didn't have to wash that because we've got a couple of areas to add this particular style of leaves or greenery in. So we'll do a couple, we'll do some happening over by the windowsills, just like I mentioned. So I'm going to do a couple of dabs. And this is where you can switch to get some of your, switch your brush to get thinner strokes. So you can use your number 2 or your number 1, whichever brush is thin enough and you're comfortable enough to do this. So there's a couple. I'm leaving lots of space in between so I can get in some other colors. And by other colors, I mean like adding some red or maybe peaks of some orange or whichever other color. I'll be using red for sure. I think the red offsetting against the pink will look real nice. Just adding a couple of dabs here and there. Almost done. Beautiful. So see how this immediately covers up that whole sill area that was a lot of white. This is where it was going. Okay, a little bit on the top here. Might be a bit much, but we're still going to keep that same theme going on all the windowsills. And then you also have the option of doing it around our pillars. I think it will look nice around the pillars, so that's what I will do. So just dotting it and kind of doing a little like zigzaggy sort of dance. Dotted strokes, whatever you want to call them. And once I'm done this one, I'm going to pause so I can finish the other one and not make this video too long for you guys, but you get the idea, right? Perfect. So there we go. So last is getting some of the Rose Madder Lake and making sure I've washed off my brush properly so I get a nice bright red. Getting the color directly from here. And we're gonna apply dabs of this. First, let's apply some on our trees. And if you want to use some metallics for this, that also will be a great idea. I might even mix some of the orange vermilion or something like that just to sort of give it more pop, because right now this is a pretty dark red and it's almost kind of blending in, not blending in, but I want it to pop way more against what we have happening. So I might do that, we'll see, but I will definitely continue using it for the prominent red that we have as the prominent red for our area here. It's got that perfect mistletoe ring to it. And another option is, like I mentioned, metallic. So you can do copper or gold, or even do a mustard yellow. Leave that up to you guys. You'll decide and let me know which one you prefer. So let me just finish doing this and I'll be right back. Okay, now we're almost done, and this is where we are going to take metallics, and actually, you know what? I'm going to use my yellow ochre instead, and I'm going to create a couple of things. For instance, using it to create a little dash here to indicate doorknobs. I wanted to do a little postal thing, but that's not going to happen right now. It's too close to the doorknob. So let's just add a couple of blobs of this color within our other areas here to kind of indicate maybe there's some gold decor happening in there. And these are the final results. So we are finished our cute little pink holiday house. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, as it really does help me continue to create cute little videos like this for you guys. So thanks guys for joining. Also make sure you're following me on Instagram and Facebook. I would love to see how your little house turns out. So make sure you tag me in there as well. Thanks guys. We'll chat soon. Bye.